Now I'll tell you the end. In January 1945, this is the winter in Poland, one day they took us on the Death March. They didn't tell us why they're taking us, because to work we usually went in a column 5 abreast. We marched to work. But this time we were ready to march to work. They took us for that march. We didn't know anything about it. So we marched for about 3 days. Only during the day, because maybe not for us, but the soldiers which went with us with the guns, they need to sleep. So at night they took us to farms. Sometimes we slept on the ground, sometimes on the hay, on the farms.
Yeah.
In the morning again on the march. Hardly any food. Hardly any food. Snow about knee deep, slippery. We used to wear wooden shoes, wooden clogs. Dutch clogs made out of wood.
I know the wooden clogs.
It was very slippery. Usually it's hard to walk with them too, but particularly on snow, it was very, very slippery. A lot of people couldn't walk anymore. They fell over, they couldn't get up, because we didn't hardly get anything to eat. We were all weak. Whoever fell over was shot by the guards who were kept on going. We found out later, after the war, that at the time when they took us on that march, the Russians were already pushing the Germans to Germany back. And the Russians took over half of Poland, and they were very close to Auschwitz. This is where the Germans decided to evacuate prisoners. Only the ones, the healthy ones, the others were left behind. Within days, they were liberated by the Russians. So when the Russians came to Auschwitz, all they found, people there couldn't walk anymore, half dead, a lot of dead people. That's what the Russians were. We used to walk for 3 days, marched. Eventually, we arrived somewhere, still in Poland, where they put us on a train, on a goods train. They packed us on the train so tight, we could hardly stand. That's how many people. No roof, was snowing, bitter cold. Horrible, no food. They dragged us from Poland to Germany on that train. The journey normally by train would have taken maybe a couple of hours. It took a couple of days. The train used to stop every few minutes. For some reason, we didn't know. A lot of people died on that train. It's a matter of fact, the last wagon from the train started off empty. They anticipated that people will die, and they put them on the last wagon. So people died. They couldn't stand anymore. When we stopped somewhere, we threw out the bodies, and those bodies were collected and stuck up on the last wagon. Because this was already in Germany, They didn't want to leave the bodies lying around, that the German people will see it. It was all right in Poland to do it, but not in Germany. You understand?
Yes.
We arrive eventually in Germany, in a concentration camp, a very big concentration camp. We didn't know, but we later found out. And evidently that concentration camp in Germany wouldn't take us because they had no room. It was too full. So they took us somewhere else, and then somewhere else. They dragged us from one camp to the other. We started off in south of Germany. Eventually we found ourselves at the Baltic Sea, north of Germany. And there was a beach. And I remember in the middle of the night, they dropped us on the beach. We were sitting there. We didn't know where we were. All we could hear is the waves, and we could feel the sand we were sitting on. That's how we knew we are on the beach, but we didn't know where. Middle of the night, pitch dark, because during the war, when the British bombed, there was blackout.
Turn the lights
All
off.
the lights were, we didn't know, we didn't see. Only next morning we noticed where we are. A beach, and about 2 or 3 kilometers from the beach there were a few ships. We didn't think it's got anything to do with us, but we're just sitting there. Eventually that lot that we started off Dead March and all, probably half of them were not with us, but there was still a couple of hundred people. They took us out with small boats, out to those ships. There were 3 big passenger ships, and one was a cargo ship. They divided us our lot, some on one, some on the other ship. I finished up on the small ship, which is a cargo ship. We got on board on the ship because they took us with little boats out to the sea and loaded us. Those ships were anchored there, waiting. When we got on the deck of the ship, we could see the ship is full with prisoners, all wearing striped uniforms, prison uniforms. All of them. It was full. We couldn't even walk on the deck because people were lying everywhere. And we wanted to sit down somewhere. I wanted to sit down somewhere and stand. I noticed a ladder going down to the next floor because it's a cargo ship. A passenger ship has stairs, but there was a ladder. I went down, hoping I'll be able to sit out on the next floor. Nothing. Full of people lying, sitting on the floor. Then I lowered myself again to the bottom of the ship, where it was wet there, right on the bottom.
Yeah.
And I found a little spot where I could sit with the back to the wall. And it was also full. This is the first time I gave up. I couldn't care anymore. I was skin and bones, hungry, couldn't walk. I thought, I wish that will come soon. I was sitting there, nothing to drink, nothing to eat, covered with lice, scratching myself. So did everybody else. Probably for a short time. This was on the 3rd of May, all in one day. 3rd of May 1945. We didn't know how the war goes on. We didn't know anything. We knew it's a war on. That's all. Anyway, suddenly we heard explosions, shootings, explosions. Being on the ship, from the outside we heard some shootings, bombings. I couldn't care less. That's how I felt. Suddenly the shooting stopped, and I could hear the ship I was on. The engines started to work. I could hear because we were right in the bottom of the ship, so we could hear the engine. For a short time, maybe 15 minutes, 20 or whatever, half an hour, and then suddenly stopped. The ship stopped, the engine stopped. Probably about half an hour later, a fellow prisoner from the upper deck called out to us down below to tell us the ship was brought to the shore. They tied it up there, and all the Germans which were on the ship with us, the guards, the captain, they all ran away from the ships, and they left the ship there tied up with all of us, minus the Germans. Suddenly, a fellow from the top deck called out to us, the ship is tied up, let's get off the ship. What were we doing on the ship? So, whoever could went out the ship. It wasn't simple, because you had to lower yourself on the rope which was holding the ship tied up to the little port there. We had to lower ourselves. Quite a few couldn't make it, and they fell into the water, and that was all. I managed, and I was sitting again on that beach watching what was going on. And you could see the other ships were on fire, burning, sinking, and you could see hundreds of people jumping into the water, hanging on to the ships. And the ships were burning. Horrible sight. Terrible. We couldn't do a thing. We just sat and watched it. Suddenly the British arrived with the trucks, with tanks, chasing the last of the Germans there, chasing them. And they came across the beach where we were sitting, and they could see what's going on. The soldiers, they didn't know what to do. Either still chase the Germans or stop and help the people there. Like us, we were sitting still alive on the beach, half alive, I would say. And there's so many bodies floating. Horrible stuff. So what they did is the tanks were after the Germans, and the rest stayed behind, and they did whatever they could. They set up a kitchen, a field kitchen, and they cooked food. They gave us food. Food we haven't seen for years.
Yeah.
A lot. We couldn't get enough. We filled ourselves and we were still hungry. A few people died from the food.
Overeating.
Not used to it. Fatty soup, we were not used to it. They did whatever the British they could with the dead people, floating and all that. This was the 3rd of May, 5 days before the end of the war, before the surrender of the Germans.
God, Hitler was dead.
Yeah, Hitler was dead. He died before. But they still didn't give up to the last minute. So they took us to a place where I was given a bed, a proper bed. I was given some clothes. It was actually an ex-Navy barracks, where they used to live there.
Ah, yeah.
And they gave me a uniform, a German Navy uniform, because it was clean. I was given a shower, and I wasn't hungry anymore. Why they did it, I explained to you. There were a lot of books written about it.
Yeah.
I could tell you the names. I don't know who will read it for you or how you could arrange it.
Sometimes you can find them if you look at the libraries.
Libraries, they have 2 books I know. One, a friend of mine wrote in America, and I got it here in the library. The other one, my wife, she used to come here, work in the office and volunteer. She saw a book here, another one, written by the same writer. So I can write it down for you, the name. You happy with that?
Yeah.
And you can read all of that.
I can look it up and see if there's an audio copy floating around. Or...
Yeah, I don't know, I can't tell.
I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your name? Like, what is your, I know it's Jack. They call you Jack.
Yeah.
What's your Polish name? Or how do they say it in Polish?
In Polish?
Yeah.
Jacob.
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 Jakob.
Yeah.
And what's your last name?
Fogel. Fogel.
Jakob Fogel. Fogel.
That's
Am I
right.
saying it right?
Yeah.
Jakob Fogel.
All right. And now write down the name. One is written, it's called The 100-Year-Old Secret.
Ah.
This is the British keep it secret for 100 years. And the other one, but the same writer, I mean, there is a lot of books.
Yeah.
Even we sell books here. We have sold books quite a bit. But there are not many about this story with the ships. I also have at home a disc and a video. Was made with interviews the airmen who did the shooting and the bombing.
Ah.
The airmen themselves tell the story why they did it. And they say, we had orders to go and bomb those ships because they're Germans, officers, soldiers, whatever, trying to run away. Probably to South America or whatever. They tried to run away and they told them to go and bomb ships. I think there's not one book, there's a lot of books written about it. There were 10,000 people on those 4 ships. The ships were packed with people.
Yeah.
Only about 300, our group from that ship, survived.
God.
I don't know anybody in Melbourne. There used to be one man in Melbourne who was with me on the ship and he survived. He died already. But I don't know. There are some people around in the world, probably, like myself, who managed to survive. This is the story of the ships. People write about it. There's a lot of Germans who wrote about it, but not a word from the British.
No.
Not apology. It was a mistake.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen. But their lips are shut. You don't hear anything. You don't.
No.
Who gave the order? Why or what? This is it.
Would have been the Air Ministry.
Well, I don't know. But it will come out. I won't be around. You will be. I won't be around.
Oh, I'll read it. I'll read the day it comes out. I'll read it and have a look. I'll read the orders.
Wait till 30 years.
Oh, I'll wait 30 years.
Yeah. So you learned a lot.
I learned a lot.
I know you know a lot, but you don't know. That's why I told your sister when you finished, maybe I will tell you more details. What happened, how it happened to me.
I think you have to. It's like people will say to me, my friends will say to me, because I'm also interested in military history. You know, I read both sides of the. You know, I read about the German military and the British military, and people will say to me, "Why do you read these things? Why do you put yourself through this? Why do you read these tragedies?"
Right.
And I say, well, the way I see it is that it is history, and you must learn what happened. You can't.
That doesn't happen again.
Yes, you can't. You have to know what happened in the past.
For the future.
Those who don't learn from the past are condemned to repeat it, is one of my favourite sayings.
That's why, to me, it's very important. I'm 88. I was in December 88. I don't know how long I was still.
My birthday's in December as well. On the 13th.
Yeah.
Mine's on the
Okay.
13th.
So, I don't know how long I will be coming here, but to me, talking to the students, high school students who come here every day with their teachers, and they're people, they travel maybe 2 or 3 hours on the bus just to come here from the country. They're people that don't know anything about Holocaust. They don't know, they've never seen a Jew, they don't know what is Jew and all that. And when they come and they hear my story personally, I'm telling them the whole story, how I was at home, you know, taken away and all that. And they see the film, and they see the museum. They know everything about it. And to me personally, it's very important.
Very, very.
Very important.
It's important to read. It's, you know, I mean, I've read Hitler's speeches because you need to know what he was thinking, what he said, why he did this. You know, so I've read a lot of his material. I've read
those books. Do they write what he thinks? You can write somebody's thinking. You make your own mind after you listen to it.
I've even read his book. As terrible as it was.
Yeah.
I've read Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf. We got one here in the museum.
Yeah. I read it. It's absolute. It's a load of garbage, really. But it's important because a lot of his policies are based on that book. The Russians. The students, although they're young, they ask me lots of questions. They'll ask. Some of them
not so, like, quite often they ask me, have you met Hitler? You know?
No.
What should I say? I can't explain. I just say no and leave it to that. But most of the questions they ask, they are really good, you know.
You know, there's an anecdote.
They're curious.
You know,
And I tell them,
sorry.
when I came out from all that, I found out what really happened, because I didn't know how the war goes on. I didn't know that my family is not alive anymore, you know. But I thought from now on there will be no more wars. Everybody will, you know, be tolerant to each other, no matter where you are from, what will be tolerant. I thought so, but I'm disappointed. They're still going on, not maybe to that extent.
They'll never end.
But the
sadly.
horrible things where people kill themselves for nothing.
Like the suicide bombers and the... Sadly, it'll never end, sadly.
Yeah, you'll see countries,
Yeah.
religions,
Yeah, it's all religious.
kill themselves.
Yeah.
And you wonder.
They don't learn. They don't
That's
remember.
I thought after going all through that, it would be nice, beautiful, everybody will love it. Well, you don't have to love each other, but tolerate.
Yes, tolerate.
It's a big difference. You know?
Tolerate is just letting people,
Tolerate.
leave people alone, let them live the way they want to
You're
live.
different, you look different, your skin is different color.
Doesn't matter, you're still human
Doesn't matter,
beings.
they're human beings. What's the difference?
You've still got the same thoughts, you've still got the same fears.
You don't have to love them and marry that, but just respect other people. And this is my reason coming here and talking. I don't came to talk to you, you know
Yeah.
all that.
Do you know there's a story I heard, it was about 1939, there was a man in Britain, he was this man, I've forgotten his name, and he wanted to keep peace going in the world. It wasn't the Prime Minister, and he managed to get...
This was before the war.
Yeah, this is before the war. He managed to phone call Hitler. He actually managed to get through to the Reich Chancellery and get through to Hitler. But they were trying to talk to each other. He was talking English, Hitler was talking in German.
He did speak.
He actually got through. He couldn't understand him, and Hitler hung up in frustration because he didn't know what he was saying, because he didn't know English. And it was this man, it was a civilian, and he said, I want to ring Hitler to stop any wars from happening. And he actually got through.
Really?
He actually got through to the Chancellor.
Is it a true story? Or
Yeah, a true story. True story. I read it somewhere. He managed to get through to the Chancellery and they put him onto Hitler. But they didn't talk long because they couldn't understand each other, so they both hung up in frustration. Because
I never heard of that.
they didn't know what each other was saying. It's like, what are you talking about? What? Who's this?
Now I'm surprised that he even answered the phone.
Yeah, they did. They put him through. I was surprised too.
You know, we have an exhibit in the museum. You couldn't read it. But in 1938, this is a year before the war,
Yep.
where they're mistreating already Jews in Germany before the war.
Yep.
There were the burning shops.
Kristallnacht.
Exactly, Crystal. And Aborigine in Australia, he lived in Footscray. He was some sort of a leader from the Aborigines, you know, whatever they call them.
Yep.
He wrote a petition, and he, in a group, a small group of Aboriginal people, came to the city, to the German consul, with that petition, complaining about the treatment of Jews in Germany. The consul at the time in Collins Street wouldn't even see them, of course.
Oh, of course not.
He sent them all. That story was written in the paper in Melbourne. The paper, I don't know, you wouldn't probably heard Argus.
Yeah, I know the Argus. I could probably find the article.
Okay. Somebody found a paper from that day, which it was in the paper. And they brought it here, and we have it on display. That fellow, the Aboriginal, name was Cooper. Right?
Yep.
A couple of weeks ago, it was this time of the year, sort of, the Aboriginal, together with other people, like with us, they decided, descendant of that Cooper will take that petition to the consul in Germany.
I read about
today.
this, and they saw them. They read
They
it.
walked from Footscray again, his grandson, great-grandson, and they gave it to the German consul. He accepted, of course. I don't know that.
Of course.
Just you know, but you heard that story?
Yes, I've heard that story.
You did?
I read that they read it, and they acknowledged it, and they responded.
Yeah.
They responded. See, I remember in 1933 I read as well, when Hitler first came to power and the first laws against the Jewish were being enacted, a group of Jewish citizens protested at Melbourne Town Hall. There was a meeting held one night, and they aired all their grievances.
Yeah.
It was a huge protest
I never heard of
at
it.
Town Hall. It happened in 1933 in about April. And the Jewish here, I read about it on the ABC once. They held this big town meeting in the town hall where they came in and basically denounced Hitler. I don't know much more about it, but I know it happened in about 1933. Yeah. They just denounced him. It was a big town meeting of Jewish, and other people turned up as well, where they just denounced what he was doing. And they said, this isn't right, you can't do this. At the Melbourne Town Hall, I believe it was.
So, you were interesting, your sister told me, in the whole Holocaust and all that.
Well, I got interested.
Among other interests.
Yeah. I got interested because my teacher in Year 10, like the textbooks, they don't tell you anything. So I got frustrated, I wanted to know more. They wouldn't let us come here because people in my class were disruptive, so they wouldn't send us here, and that really upset me.
Well, this is already 26 years
Yep.
old.
And I decided to start researching, and I had to do an assignment on the Holocaust. So I started researching and reading, and I just wanted to know more and more and more of what happened to the Jewish people and anyone else who was persecuted by the Nazis. And then I wanted to know about the Nazis and their motives and why they did it. And I read in my discoveries that there was a petition given to the British in 1944 to bomb Auschwitz by a group of Jewish citizens in Britain.
Yeah.
And they denied their request because what worried them...
The more important thing.
Well, what worried them also was that if they bombed... They did mount one air raid against the camp, an American plane, in about 1944. They mounted a bombing raid, but it actually killed more civilians. They bombed the barracks. They thought it was a German guard barracks.
No, they asked to bomb the railway there.
Yeah, the railway, sorry.
Where they bring the
Yep. And they wouldn't do it.
They wouldn't do it.
They wouldn't do it.
There was a fellow, Jan Korski. Have you read about him?
No, I haven't, but I want to.
Okay. He was a diplomat or something before the war in Poland, a young man.
Oh, yeah.
He was in the army, an officer and whatnot. He was involved in the government, something. When the Germans invaded he was fighting with the in the forests with the not soldiers, they were civilians, you know, sort of, they were
Partisans.
He was a part. At that time, a Polish government was in England. There was a sort of temporary government.
Yeah.
From Poles running away to England. He was a courier. They sent him to England during the war. I don't remember which year. He spoke with the foreign minister in England, was Eden.
Yep.
And he told them what the Germans are doing to the Jews in Europe. They didn't take any notice. He went to America and he managed to speak. I think Roosevelt himself was president then.
Yep.
And he didn't tell them what to do. Do something. Absolutely nothing. Eventually he wrote a book and he was traveling all over the world talking about it. He was here too. We have pictures of him. And he told the whole story about himself and all that. He died. But if they say they didn't know what's happening in Europe, it's because they keep on saying, you know, some of the English or even Germans say they didn't know what's going on.
No.
They didn't know.
Because Hitler didn't, because the Germans, there was an outcry over the euthanasia program in 39 and 40 when they were killing the disabled. And the German public found out about it. A bishop found out and told the public. And there was a huge outcry. They had to, they stopped it for a while and took it underground because the public couldn't take that. And that's why Hitler kept it from the Germans about the Holocaust. And there was a wife of a Nazi party official, and she commented to friends at a party that she'd seen a train full of Austrian Jews being taken in wagons. And suddenly she was shunned after that. They didn't want to know her because she was going to tell the public
Really?
what was going on. And she suddenly wasn't invited to Nazi parties or anything anymore. She was shunned. I don't know what ended up happening to her.
You know, you understand, knowing the whole situation. People ask me, when I say people, I mean students coming, what do you think about the Germans now? Do you hate them? Our answer is, my answer is, we don't hate anybody.
No.
Because hate brings the problems even today. People hate each other, so we don't hear. But when I was liberated, and slowly I found out what happened to my family. They're all dead and all that. Living in Germany, when you live somewhere, you have to talk to them. You can't ignore them.
Yes.
You have to. I felt many times horrible. Not that I showed it, but I felt horrible. Whenever I saw at that time a German who was my age or older, in my mind, I could see him killing my parents. That's how I felt. Because the Germans themselves, when you talk to them then, they always said, we didn't know.
Or they denied it.
How couldn't they know? They didn't. Okay.
They saw things.
But today, even then, if I see a boy or girl younger than me, to me they're the same like everybody else, because they couldn't have They were too young to do anything or be anybody. Even somebody, a 50-year-old German will come in here. And I know he's German. I can't say against him anything.
No.
What maybe his grandfather or father did all those things, but I can't blame him.
No.
That's how I feel.
There's no point. It just makes it worse.
But the people that age, like I say, I'm 88 and I was 15. Actually, when the war broke out, I was 14 and a half.
Yeah.
Okay? So something, I'm 88 now. From those people, there are probably not many alive anymore, you know. But the other day, somebody pointed out to me, a couple, he knew, that they're Germans. Well, that's all right, Germans. But they're in the 90s. As soon as she said that in the 90s, you know, I suddenly realized he could have been one of them. Because I was 14, he would probably be about 17 or 18. This is the year where they took them all into the army, the Hitlerjugend, in SS and all that, you know. But, you know, suddenly.
I know the Germans are terribly upset over what happened these days. They're very incredible guilt.
Yes, okay, well, they should be.
Yeah, they should be.
They should be, but the majority, of course, there is still some, you know, who, you know. Sort of.
Well, I've got a book by Simon Wiesenthal. He was a German. He hunted, helped hunt Nazi criminals.
Yeah,
died recently, I believe. Yeah. Simon Wiesenthal.
Wiesenthal.
Yep.
He's not alive anymore.
Yeah, I know. I think they started a centre in his honour.
There is still there, the centre.
Yeah, Simon Wiesenthal Centre. I haven't read a lot of his book yet, but he always said it wasn't about getting even. It was about getting justice. It wasn't about revenge.
That's right.
It was justice.
Yeah.
And he summed it up
to
so
catch
well.
Them,
yep.
Punish them.
Get them. They shouldn't be able to live their lives without being punished after what they did. They forfeited that right when they did these things.
Yeah. It's a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
To me, I'll die with worrying. Only 3 years ago, I found out there's a place in Germany run by the Red Cross, not any particular country, for the general Red Cross, to get names, people missing in the world, doesn't matter who, even German soldiers, to find out what happened to them, families and all that. And I spoke with somebody who was there. It's a huge building in Germany, a small place, but they're huge because the subject is big.
Yeah.
You know? I managed to get a form and I filled it out and I put it on my whole family. My father, my brother, my mother, all my brothers, because I had 3 brothers and a sister, and I put them all down, how old they were, you know, everything, all the details they asked, and I send it away by email from here. A little while later, what I mean later, probably a few months, 3 or 4 months, I did get an answer. As a matter of, I have all the papers still here too. They went through, because these days with the computers and all that, they're well organized and all that.
Yeah.
They couldn't find, they found only my younger brother details, what happened to him. And they write down where he was, where he died, how old he was, what he died of, heart failure. The date, the hour of the day, with a copy of the death certificate in German.
My God.
He was the only one from my family I knew in black and white what happened to him. I thought maybe they buried him there, but I asked people who were in that camp in Austria, and they say they used to burn the bodies. Right?
They burnt them.
Okay. About 4 weeks ago, a lady was here to visit us, an American woman. I think she's Jewish, I don't know. Came to visit, and she spoke to somebody in the office, a fellow there. She introduced herself. She works in the Washington Holocaust Museum. It's one of the biggest, very big there. And her job is to find out families, if she can find them. And the fellow said, he knows me well, he said, look, I have a name. His name is Jack Fogel. He's got a horrible story, he lost everyone. Maybe you could sort of go through and see. Yeah? She said, I'll have to leave, but email me all the details. And he did. It took about 2 weeks later. She sent him emails like this, all about my family. She found my brother, which was older than me by about 3 years, died in the same camp as my young brother. And they couldn't find it. She found it with the same thing. Date of birth and all that. So I know the two brothers, they died, one in April and one in March 1945. Days before the end of the war.
God, like Anne Frank. She died not long before as well. God.
So you can see. There are a lot of places where they have, they all write down, we found only that, but from the Red Cross with the letter. We do have a lot of names and details and all that, but don't forget a lot of papers were intentionally destroyed. Or lost, the bombing or whatever. But whatever there is, we get every day different stories. So from the whole family, officially, I know two brothers where they died within a few weeks of each other.
God. Does it make you feel, well, not better is the wrong word, but does it make you feel a bit more at peace that you at least know what happened to them?
Not really,
no,
but I wanted to know. Maybe it does.
I didn't think it would.
Maybe.
No.
But I wanted to, just to know what happened to him. Otherwise, I could have died anyway. I had a brother, my oldest brother. I have here a photo in this uniform. He was Polish army during the war. We didn't hear from him. And so I asked those people in Germany, and when I put up the bill, I put his name too. Absolutely nothing.
No records.
From here, somebody who is good at it, he said, Jack, I'll try something. What I wanted to know, maybe there is a grave somewhere in Europe, in Poland, or whatever, that maybe I'm too old to travel, but maybe my kids or the grandchild will be in Europe and they could see where their uncle is buried. You know?
Yeah.
This was important for me to know. We tried anyway. He wrote a letter to the consul here, he explained. The consul wrote back, gave him addresses in Warsaw, Poland, of the headquarters from the army, whatever it is, that he made an application there. He wrote him everything about my brother, where we were stationed before the war, which town and all that, how old he was, more or less. I don't know, I didn't know the exact date, and so on, all the details we have. He got in touch with Poland. I got an answer. They looked everywhere. They looked places where mass graves from Polish soldiers are. They can't find anything. With the same thing, a lot of papers were lost, blah, 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 blah. When you ask me, does it make any difference? It does. This is the only difference. I knew maybe I can find out there is a grave there, and I won't travel anymore. But maybe for my family, there will be in Europe. They might go where he's buried, and maybe put flowers on the grave, a photo, or something. You know.
I hope they find him.
Well, I don't think so. They couldn't find.
No.
But I thought maybe.
God.
Any questions?
No, I don't think I have any questions. I don't think I have any more questions anyway.
Okay.
Actually, I do have one. What did the British say when they liberated you? Did they ask you a lot of questions, or did they just
No, we didn't
want to
much.
get you
They liberated
out?
us. They could see how we look, skin and bone, filthy, dirty.
I know the Americans used to drag German civilians to see them.
Yeah, I've heard, the Germans,
Yeah, they used to make
see
them.
Maybe say to Antrong, where I was liberated.
Yeah.
I was liberated in a coastal town, a small town near Liebe.
Yeah.
It's called Neustadt, a village.
I've heard of Neustadt.
You have?
Yeah, I've heard of Neustadt.
Neustadt.
I don't know where, but I've heard the name.
Neustadt. It was the Neustadt, whatever. But nobody talked about it.
No.
Nobody talked about it. There was once here a lady came in, a German lady, with white hair. I don't know how. She was maybe younger than me. She was a young girl, I don't know, 7, 8 years, 9 years old, and she lived in Neustadt. And she remembered that story. She was 9, and all she remembered is they lived on the first floor near the water somewhere. And the father, whenever she went to the window, the father dragged her away, not to see what was going on there. She came here to tell us that. I don't know what happened to her.
God. That's remarkable.
Yeah. But the British, they did whatever they could. There's not much they could do for the dead,
No.
but they did whatever they could for us who are still alive. You know, took probably a couple of months, and I was on my feet again. The first thought I had, the war is over, I'm going home to my family, because I didn't know. It's a matter of fact, all these 5 years in the camp, I didn't know. I knew it was a war on, but I didn't have details. What's going on? No newspaper. We were not allowed to talk any civilians, Poles or Germans. No radio, nothing. I knew the war is on. So I am off to go to Poland. I hitched from soldiers' ride, you know, and I got to the border. I couldn't go over the border. The Russians were then occupying Poland, and there was a border. Nobody could go anyway, because the Germans then, they took off their uniforms, and as civilians they tried to go home or the other way or whatever. So it was closed. So it took a while when I was in Germany to get anywhere. Did I tell you about the letter I wrote home?
No.
No. I thought I would write a letter home. Maybe.
Actually, yes, you did to the neighbour?
Sorry?
You wrote to the neighbour, I believe.
Yeah, with the neighbour. And then I found out, I actually sent a letter to my parents, but I didn't get any answer. Then I thought I would write a letter to a Christian lady, Polish lady, a very close friend of my parents, a widow, and I wrote to her a letter. And she wrote me back that nobody came back.
God.
So I said, well, I'm not going home. Who will I go home for? There's nobody to go home. So I'm hoping I will go somewhere else. Did I tell you about how I got to Australia?
Yes, you did. Yes.
So, I came here.
You tell me about Australia.
Yeah. So you know my story.
I know your story.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story.
So that story, which takes me probably half an hour, it will be full of students, and I'll speak to them, and I'll tell them my story. And all of them, I could see, you can feel that they're listening. Because if you could see a boy or girl, they can't sit, they move.
Yeah.
You see, but they all listening, very interesting.
Do you know, I actually heard I heard a radio broadcast. It was from Warsaw, from September 1939. And all they were doing before the city fell in the last few days was playing out of the national anthem of Poland.
Oh, yeah?
Or they were playing a piece called Polonaise by Chopin.
Well, yeah, it was Pole.
Yeah.
Chopin was Polish.
And that was the radio ID signal of Polish radio. The opening bars of Polonaise.
Trumpet?
It wasn't a trumpet, they used to have a piano.
Oh,
It was done on a piano, it was just the opening lines, the opening bars.
yeah. Nice music. You know.
I love it. I love classical music.
Yeah. Most famous is the Polonaise.
And there was another man, there was another Polish composer who spoke at the start of the war named, I don't know his first name, Paderewski. Paderewski, sorry.
Yeah. He was in the government.
Yeah.
But he was also a composer and wrote music.
What is his first name?
I don't remember.
Yeah, because the thing with my talking computer, because it's American, when it says Polish names, it butchers them. It doesn't sound like anything. And you have to try and figure out what they're saying.
Yeah, that's why you tape it.
And that's why I love listening, to survivors' testimony, because I can learn how the names are said, because I hate saying names wrong. To me, it's insulting. You better find out how to say them right.
The problem I have with names, I don't remember.
God. Yeah. But I heard a broadcast from Paderewski. He was speaking from, I think he was speaking from London. He'd gone there.
Yeah.
And he sort of said, so, Hitler loves peace, eh? Sort of similar vein. He's saying, well, he's not showing it by doing this. And I've also got in my collection, I've got a big collection of about 3,000 audio files from the Second World War.
Yeah.
And I've got a broadcast. It was from an English radio station in Warsaw in Poland. And it said, this is the Polish Army communique number 1. And it listed all the towns that were being bombed that day on September 1st. And it was a warning to English listeners in Poland as to what towns were being hit, so they could, be careful.
Yeah.
There was, Katowice was being bombed. Katowice was being bombed. Kielce was being bombed. All these towns they named about 20 of them.
You're talking about bombed by the Germans?
Yeah, bombed by the Germans, sorry, in the invasion.
Of the war.
First day of the conflict, there was an announcement.
Yeah.
And another broadcast I have is an American war correspondent named Edward R. Murrow did a broadcast when they liberated Bergen-Belsen. And he did a big broadcast describing the conditions there in the concentration camp.
Yeah.
And I read that when General George S. Patton, who liberated it, saw the camp, he toured it, he literally went behind the building and threw up. That's how revolted he was. And he actually went behind and threw up. He was that shaken by what he'd seen.
Do you know, I have on my arm a tattoo.
Yep.
The number I had in Auschwitz.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what was the number?
140,964.
140,964.
This was my name in the camps. Prisoner number 140,000.
And that's how they would address you.
Yeah. And it's still there. They ask me always, the students, why can't you remove it? Because you can remove tattoos with laser today. You can remove it. And I always say, why should I?
Why remove it?
Why should I?
It's what happened to you. Why remove it?
People see it and say, well, it doesn't worry me. Nobody up to now came up to me and asked me, oh, what is this?
Yeah, why would you get that?
Except my grandson. He must have been about 4. And he was sitting next to me in the car. In the summer, I wore short shirt. And he asked me, Grandpa, what's that? Because today it's popular. A lot of people have.
Yeah, I've got tattoos myself.
You have?
Yeah.
Your sister has,
Okay.
And he asked me, what's that? At that moment, I didn't know what to say. A young 4-year-old, he wouldn't understand. So I told him, it's a friend's telephone number I wrote down, so I remember. But as soon as I saw it, I was sorry. I told him a lie. Never tell a little. You can say anything, but not a lie.
Yeah, never lie to them, never.
I could say some naughty people did it, and forget it, He didn't ask me anymore. Today he's 15, but he knows all about it, the Holocaust and all that. But this is the only time, this wasn't a problem, unpleasantness to me, not to him,
Yeah.
that I told him a lie. So this is it. Okay, I think we slowly, it's 3/4 of an hour. I don't think any more people.
It's been the best talk that I've ever had.
Yeah.